It's time for Come and Talk It with your host, Michael Cargill, brought to you by Texas Law Shield. Over the last decade, Michael has championed and supported the rights of law-abiding Texans to own and use firearms. He is the owner of Central Texas Gun Works, a veteran of the United States Army, and has achieved national exposure in such prestigious media outlets such as Forbes Magazine, Fox Business News, CNN Money, AOL, BBC World News, Huffington Post, and the New York Times. Cargill vigorously defends lawful gun ownership in this country without regard to party politics. And now, here's Michael Cargill.
Good day, Austin, Texas, the live music capital of the world. Let's praise the Lord and pass the ammunition. All right, so today we're going to have one of the attorneys for Daniel Perry inside the studio. We're going to talk about that court case and kind of break some of that stuff down because I want to get into the weeds and get into the details of how this case unfolded, what happened on that particular night back in 2020 when we had protests, rioters, protesters downtown Austin, and then Daniel Perry, who's a sergeant in the United States Army, Uber driver, was dropping off a passenger downtown, picking up another passenger, and end up running to protesters, not physically, but, figuratively, and there was a shooting. And so we're going to talk about that, how that stuff unfolded and how it came to pass. How did he get convicted of murder and actually get sentenced to, I think, 25 years? Also, breaking news out of the state of Texas, Austin. DPS, Department of Public Safety, is temporarily suspending partnership with Austin Police as troopers redeployed to Texas border cities. So, the last day for the Department of Public Safety troopers to be in Austin was May 13th. So that was the last day. So as of today, chaos is actually, it's chaos now already.
Chaos.
It's chaos already, man.
It's crazy out here.
There was like a car chase early this morning. It was chaos already. So it didn't even take long. The Texas Department of Public Safety has suspended its partnership with the Austin Police Department. The move comes as Title 42 policies expired earlier this week. According to an email message from APD Chief Joseph Chacon, DPS troopers are being heavily deployed in border cities. It is unknown at this time when DPS will be able to re-engage in the partnership with APD. But it will not be for several weeks at least, said Chacon. So the partnership between the two agencies, dubbed the Austin Violent Crimes Task Force, began on March 30th as a way to help APD with its 300 vacancies. APD statistics have shown a significant decrease in violent crime, response times, and calls for service in the areas where, DPS troopers have been supplementing APD officers on patrols. Now, violent crime in hotspots areas dropped by 58%, according to data from the department. Despite the benefits, some council members and community advocates have called for changes to the partnership, saying it's unfairly targeting communities of color. And DPS and APD at a council briefing earlier this month said they would make some adjustments to eliminate any unintended consequences. Now, according to Chief Chacon, he says this in a statement. I'd like to take this moment to thank DPS for the work they have done to assist in keeping our community safe. I will keep you informed on when we anticipate their return as I am made aware. So we'll see what happens and how this stuff progresses. We'll see what happens down by the border. See if I think the state guard, Texas State Guard's down there, DPS troopers down there. So we'll see what happens with what's happening at the border. I know some people are concerned here in Austin. I had some people walk to the gun store and try to, buying firearms because they're concerned about the crisis, so-called crisis at the border. So we'll see how that affects us here, knowing that we're, back down to we're short 300 police officers now, and we're not being helped out by the state police. So we'll see how that progresses. Also, there's some other breaking news. A federal judge rules that adults ages 18 to 20 cannot be blocked from purchasing handguns from federal firearm licensed dealers. Now, this is a really, really big deal, Zach. Really big deal.
That is.
Because we're talking about, as of right now, in Texas, if you're 18, 19, and 20 years old, you cannot purchase a handgun from a gun store or a federal firearms licensed dealer. You actually have to get it as a private sale or as a gift. You can buy a long gun, a rifle, or shotgun from a gun store at 18, as young as 18. But for a handgun, you have to be at least 21 years of age in order to purchase it from a federal firearms licensed dealer.
And a bill just got through committee in relation to that as well, right?
That's right. A lot of bills are are actually passing around the country where they're raising that age limit, from 18 to 21.
So they're trying to say that
rifles.
you can't even get a rifle at age 18 to 20.
So for a majority of, that's right, for majority of rifles, like AR-15s, the majority of rifles, they're actually raising that age to 21 years of age.
So they don't want anyone 18 to 20 to have any kind of firearm.
That's right. You can own your own home. You can live live by yourself at 18, 19,
You can go
20.
to the army.
You can
and
die.
Go fight overseas and die for your country.
That's right. Die for your country. You can go vote. That's right. But they don't want you to be able to defend yourself at all at home. That's crazy.
That's wild.
Yes. But you know what? Guess what? That all what they're trying to do in Texas, certain people, what they're trying to do in other states around the country, that's not going to pass the constitutional smell test.
It's going to be struck down by these courts.
That's right. So a federal judge in Virginia has ruled that federal laws prohibiting 18 to 20-year-olds from getting handguns at federally licensed firearms dealers are unconstitutional. Now, this is in a 71-page opinion released Wednesday in U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of Virginia. Senior U.S. District Judge Robert Payne ruled that federal laws and regulations barring the dealers from selling the handguns to adults ages 18 to 20 violates the Second Amendment. Now, Payne ruled in favor of 4 men between the ages of 18 and 20 who expressed a desire to purchase handguns from the federal licensed firearms dealers, denying the defense motion to dismiss and granting the plaintiffs a summary judgment. So, man, they couldn't get dismissed. Didn't get, a motion to stay or anything. Nothing. Man. So we'll see that they're going to have to appeal this case to the appellate court. And then if the appellate court takes it up, they're going to have to, we'll see how they rule. And it possibly could go to the Supreme Court. We're looking at a Supreme Court case in the making. That doesn't mean right now that 18, 19, 20-year-olds can go out right now and purchase handguns from federal firearms license dealers, because you can't.
They can get them as gifts or private sales.
That's right. You cannot walk into the gun store and buy a handgun right now. So we have to wait until this case, because I've been getting phone calls already. We have to wait until this case makes its way up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court rules on this, and then that will become the law of the land. We're going to come back and talk a little bit more about this story, the 18, 19, 20-year-olds being able to purchase handguns from federal firearms licensed dealers. Also, this is big. This story is really big because guess what? Now, 18, 19, 20-year-olds can get a license to carry handgun and carry a handgun in the state of Texas. And, man, this is really big. You can get your license. If this passes, you'll be able to buy a handgun. Man, we're going to talk about this and more. This is Michael Cargill, and you are listening to Come and Talk It.
Peace, this is Maj Toure. You're listening to Come and Talk It Radio with Michael Cargill.
Your business is going to have technical problems. There's no question about it. Pacific Office Automation is your guide, because problem solving is our passion. Every business is unique, no matter how big or how small the problem. From copiers and printers, telephone systems, managed IT, print services, and more, we offer integrated, streamlined office solutions to keep your office humming. With Pacific Office Automation, it's problem solved. Visit pacificoffice.com today to find out more.
I'm a U.S. Army veteran with a strong sense of duty and respect for our system of government. After 12 years, I was honorably discharged and decided I would fulfill the American dream of entrepreneurship and open up a gun shop in Austin, Texas. At my shop, I teach people to be law-abiding and how to safely use their firearm. On page 46, going to talk about Penal Code Section 46.02. The day that ban went into effect, I went into my local ATF in Austin and turned over my bump stock because I'm a law-abiding citizen. But I wasn't going down without a legal fight. So that's why I reached out to NCLA.
NCLA is representing Michael Cargill because federal agencies do not have the power to rewrite statutes. Bump stocks are not machine guns. If Congress wants to change the law and ban bump stocks, it certainly can do so. But we can't have the executive branch rewriting a statute and putting people in jail for up to 10 years.
It's a problem because, this government agency has said, you know what, something that is legal is now illegal, and we're going to confiscate it from you, and we're not going to compensate you for it, and you're going to become a criminal.
The goal of our case here is to tell the ATF that they can't get away with this kind of administrative lawmaking. This isn't constitutionally permissible, and this goes against everything that our nation was founded on.
The bump stock ban turned innocent law-abiding citizens into criminals overnight, even though they were compliant with the statute. And that's not right.
This case is not about where you stand on bump stocks. It's about the rule of law. It's about whether an agency can rewrite a statute and turn a law-abiding citizen into a criminal. If the ATF can ban bump stocks, any agency can ban anything.
Welcome back to Come and Talk It. And now here's Michael Cargill.
All right, so we're back, and I'll tell you, we're talking about that, the federal cases that are going on around the country. We're talking about the court case that actually, where 18, 19, 20-year-olds will be able to, they can now get their license to carry handgun in Texas, and also 18, 19, 20-year-olds, soon, if this case, makes it to the Supreme Court, they'll be able to purchase handguns from a federal firearms license dealer, which, the judge says, hey, you know what? 18, 19, 20-year-olds should be able to purchase handguns from dealers because our forefathers, the framers of our Constitution, they didn't put any restrictions on 18, 19, 20-year-olds. At 18, you're younger than that. You're able to die for your country, defend your country. So there were no restrictions when it came to that during that time frame. So they said, hey, that's not in the framework in the mindset of what our forefathers were thinking about.
Fun fact, James Monroe was 18. Aaron Burr was 20.
Ooh, check that out.
Alexander Hamilton was 21.
Oh, man, we got to come back and talk about that.
Yeah.
All right, I want to change gears a little bit, though. I want to talk about this Daniel Perry case. For those that don't know, if because you've been, sitting under a rock somewhere, back on July 25th of 2020, Garrett Foster, a 28-year-old man, was killed in Austin, Texas by 30-year-old Daniel Perry, Sergeant United States Army, who was working part-time for a rideshare company, Uber, and dropping off a passenger, picking up another passenger downtown Austin, end up running into a protest, that was going on downtown Austin, rioters, protesters. It was called a Black Lives Matter event. And so this is all surrounding the, going back to like May 2020 to George Floyd and all that stuff, that protest and all that stuff going on. So Daniel Perry found himself downtown Austin, and he dropped off a passenger on the 4th Street, goes to Congress, makes that right turn on Congress. As he's making that right turn, protesters are marching up Congress, and he ends up coming to a stop. They surround his vehicle, and you know what? We have Daniel Perry's attorney here inside the studio, and I'm going to have him tell us, what happened on that night of July 25th. Man, you know what? Sir, welcome to Come and Talk It.
Glad to be here.
Absolutely. Tell us about yourself a little bit. Doug, you were in the military.
A long time in the military. I did.
That's right. Doug,
altogether 30 years.
30 years. What branch of service?
Army.
Yes, sir.
15 years active duty, 15 years reserve component. It wasn't sequential like that. It was a lot of back and forth, especially after 9/11.
The most important branch of service, the United States Army. Don't forget it.
I was a Green Beret officer, and so I spent a lot of time. Well, all my deployments were in special operations assignments. So Iraq was with the 10th Special Forces Group at the initial invasion and early days of that conflict. And then later on, Afghanistan, I worked for the U.S. Special Operations Command, and then spent some time here in the United States working for the Joint Special Operations Command, and uh, later commanded a unit that did a lot of work in Northwest Africa.
Wow. Nice.
That I just boiled down 30 years.
Wow.
for you right there.
That was that's big. That's very, very good accomplishment there. And thank you for your service, sir. And so, let's get down to what happened in July there, 2020. Your client, was actually dropped off and pastured downtown. I'll let you take it from there.
Sure. You had pretty much the facts accurate. He had come down from Fort Hood earlier that day because if you're going to try to make money as a rideshare, you're going to make more money in Austin than Killeen, Texas. And Michael, you may recall, if you're in the military, you're inevitably going to have pay problems. They're going to screw up your pay. And Daniels had experienced some pay problems recently. They hadn't paid him right. He needed to make money, comes down to Austin. It travels all around the city, goes out to the airport, picking up fares. He's north, he's south, he's everywhere. And then right around 10 o'clock, he is downtown on 4th Street, you mentioned, and he's having this text exchange with a young lady. And the young lady is somebody he had driven earlier in the evening, and now she's in touch, inviting him to link up, have a romantic liaison with him.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And Daniel's single, and he was very much interested in hooking up with this gal. And then, so they're texting back and forth, and then she drops a bomb and says, hey, bring $200 when you come pick me up, and we get together. So she was looking to get paid for this rendezvous, and that threw a curve in Daniel's plans. And as he's approaching Congress Avenue, he is, trying to figure out a snappy comeback to tell this gal, not only do I not pay for it, but, some kind of retort
Right.
to let her know he was disappointed.
Right.
And so he makes that right-hand turn. And you're right, he does stop his vehicle because he can't proceed forward anymore.
He didn't make contact with anyone.
No, he did not hit
Vehicle
anybody.
didn't touch anybody.
In fact, at the start of the curve, he was going 12 miles an hour, and then 8 miles an hour, and then 6 miles an hour. And then
How do we know that?
we know that from forensic engineering. We had an engineering company out of Colorado examine all the videos and the photos. They did a complete scan of that intersection, and they were able to tell us with exact precision how fast he was going.
Because there are cameras there. Isn't that Halo cameras close by or something?
There was some halo camera evidence, and there was also some surveillance cameras from the Frost Bank building.
Okay, so Halo cameras are the cameras that the city of Austin, uses to, go back and take a look at, different things that are going on and actually traffic and handle traffic and all that kind of stuff if you don't know. And then security camera footages from the different businesses, local
Yep.
businesses close by. Okay.
And so the vehicle stops, and then the vehicle immediately gets attacked. People are kicking the car, hitting the car.
How many set of footprints were on the vehicle?
24 sets of handprints
24 sets of handprints were on the vehicle.
on the vehicle.
Different. That's 24 different people.
We don't know that exactly.
Okay.
To be fair, we don't know that exactly because some of the prints weren't enough of a print for them to analyze.
Okay.
They did,
But 24 different fingers.
yes,
Gotcha.
they did
Hands.
hands.
Oh, 24 different hands.
Well, that's the point I'm trying to make. We
Okay.
don't know if it was 12 people or 10 people or 24 people, but we do know the car is surrounded.
Gotcha.
And something hits the passenger side window so hard that it skims along the window and etches a scratch into it deep enough and powerful enough with enough force to hit the window that hard. And so Daniel
Did it break the window?
did not crack the window, but
Okay.
it is etched. This scrape is etched into the window. So
Gotcha.
imagine how
Okay.
hard that would have had to be.
Correct.
Daniel stops. He looks to his left. He's trying to figure out what's going on. Looks to his right, then looks to his left.
Is his window up or down?
Windows are up.
Okay.
As he looks to his left, he sees this man approaching with a AK-47. Daniel knows what an AK-47 is. He served
Absolutely.
in Afghanistan, and he sees this guy motioning for Daniel to roll his window down.
Now, how often has Daniel been deployed to overseas, Afghanistan?
Well, Afghanistan once for
okay.
a period of 9 or 10 months.
Okay.
And then he also served in Germany.
How long ago had he been deployed to Afghanistan did this happen?
It had been several years. Daniel
okay.
joined the military right after 9/11
Okay.
because he felt like that's what he should do.
Okay.
And so it had been several years since he had been deployed.
Okay.
So he sees this guy motions for him to roll down the window. This, of course, is Garrett Foster. Mr. Foster's wearing a mask and a hat, and Daniel, without, I guess, thinking too much,
Right. And I know
down
we
his
have a
window.
photo of that too,
Yeah.
of the way Garrett Foster was looking that night.
And then very shortly, this all happened in a matter of 6 seconds. Mr. Foster, who has the weapon at the low ready, starts to raise it up, and according to Daniel, it gets about parallel with the bottom edge of his driver's side window. And Daniel decides that he has to take action to defend his life. He pulls out his firearm, a handgun, and fires 5 rounds, pretty much all of those hitting Mr. Foster.
And the window, you said he had rolled the window down?
He did.
Okay.
And then as soon as he discharges his firearm, people are scattering, so he's able to move forward. He drives down the street, down Congress, going south. Within 40 seconds, is on the phone calling 911. He's begging the 911 operator to let him come to the police station so he can be safe, so he can make contact with law enforcement. 911 operator doesn't want him to do that, wants him to pull over and have officers contact him. And so he does do exactly that off of...
Let me go back for a second. So tell me about the traffic, the people walking on, blocking traffic. We come back from the break. I want to ask you about that. I want to ask you
Sure.
about blocking traffic. What's the punishment for that, for blocking the roadway and stuff like that? I want to get into that and a little bit more. This is Michael Cargill, and you are listening to Come and Talk It.
Hi, this is Stephen Williford, the Barefoot Defender. I get my global gun news from Michael Cargill at Come and Talk It.
Your business is going to have technical problems. There's no question about it. Pacific Office Automation is your guy because problem solving is our passion. Every business is unique, no matter how big or how small the problem. From copiers and printers, telephone systems, managed IT, print services, and more, we offer integrated, streamlined office solutions to keep your office humming. With Pacific Office Automation, it's problem solved. Visit pacificoffice.com today to find out more.
Hello, my name is Edwin Walker. I'm an independent program attorney with Texas Law Shield. I want to talk to you today about an issue that we see on a daily basis. In fact, you yourself will encounter it on a daily basis, and that is the subject of road rage. I am sure that you have all seen road rage. You may have actually been involved in a road rage incident. Now, if you're a responsible gun owner, I'm going to give you a few words of advice on how to react when you find yourself in one of these unfortunate road rage incidents. While on the roadways, we all observe something that makes us upset. Whether it's poor driving, unsafe driving, or just simply somebody being very discourteous. By all means, you should restrain yourself from engaging that person and telling them how bad their actions were. because this can be perceived as an act of road rage. If you're a lawful gun owner, you have a firearm in your vehicle, you do not want to be viewed as the aggressor in a road rage situation. Now, with regard to a situation where an individual has chosen to rage against you, and you are the actual victim of the road rage, if you and the other individuals are still in their automobiles, do not use your firearm to respond to any of the rager's activities. This is because law enforcement views the fact that you're both still safely in your metal boxes as removing any threat of immediacy that you may be harmed.
Welcome back to Come and Talk It. And now here's Michael Cargill.
All right, so we're talking about the Daniel Perry trial. We're talking with the defense attorney, Doug O'Connell, defense attorney for Daniel Perry. And we're talking about the murder trial that took place this year. Well, Daniel Perry was sentenced to 15 years.
25.
25 years. Wow. 25 years. All right, so, and Doug, we're going back to that night, and there are a couple questions out there. People are throwing questions at us. Someone says, well, you forgot to mention the visible foot traffic in front of him when he drove into the crowd. You want to address that?
Absolutely, yeah. As Daniel Perry is approaching Congress Avenue from 4th Street, what he can see is on the far side of the intersection, there is foot traffic. But he's not going straight, he's turning right. And he doesn't see the bulk of the crowd until he is already committed to the right-hand turn. And that's why the speed drops from 12 to 8 to 6 to stop. And so the other thing to keep in mind is that we had 2 other Uber drivers who were operating downtown that night testify. And we also had another civilian out there who was driving around, and they testified as well. And it's consistent across the evidence that Saturday night in Austin, Texas, there's always lots of foot traffic, especially in the entertainment area, people coming in and out of bars and traveling all over the street. What's lost in this whole analysis is Daniel Perry, he did commit a crime, and that crime was turning right on red without stopping. That is a crime, and we've never shied away from that. But he had an absolute right to be on the streets with his car, and the protesters, while exercising their First Amendment rights, that's not an absolute right. And in Austin, what the government normally requires is that you get a permit ahead of time so they can block the streets and make it safe for everybody.
Okay.
And of course, that didn't happen.
All right. And then there's another question out there. Someone says, isn't Daniel an ex-FBI informant?
No.
Okay.
I don't know. I've never heard that before. Daniel would have told me that's crazy.
Yeah. I just want to throw everything out there so people
lately a lot of people seem confused because the ex-Marine up in New York City.
Daniel Penny,
right. Daniel Perry, Daniel Penny. There's a lot of confusion. I'm not suggesting Mr. Penny is ex anything other than a Marine, but maybe that's where that's from.
The only ex-FBI informant I can think of in any highly politicized case like this would be Enrique Terrio from the Proud Boys, but that's completely unrelated. Maybe that's what the person is thinking of.
All right, and then I want to get into, all right, so he makes that right turn, and I want to ask you about blocking traffic. Yes, you have a First Amendment right to protest and take to the streets and let the world know your grievances and all that good kind of stuff. But is it legal for you to block traffic?
It's not.
Okay.
It's not.
So 2 people were committing a crime there. The protesters were committing a crime by blocking traffic. Daniel Perry committed a crime by making a right turn on the red before stopping.
Correct. And Mr. Foster was breaking a handful of crimes.
Not just one.
Okay.
What was he doing wrong?
There was consistent testimony that he was brandishing the rifle, the AK-47.
Meaning pointing
it at somebody, but more specifically, the legal definition, I believe, is carrying it in a threatening manner.
Gotcha.
And so, the police had tried to talk to Foster and say, hey, what you're doing is concerning to people. It's scaring people. It's unnecessary. You have the absolute right to carry a firearm, but why don't you sling it on your back? Why are you carrying it at the low ready with your hand on the pistol grip and the other hand on the foregrip? Because the police officers were trying to communicate to Foster that anybody who knows anything about firearms knows that it's going to take just 0.2 of a second to bring that rifle up and point it at somebody. And of course, in our country, you don't have to wait till the firearm's pointed at you to take action.
Okay. And then I want to get into, you said he made that right turn.
Michael, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
You made the point Mr. Foster was committing several other offenses. We should probably talk about that before I forget.
Go for it.
One of the pieces of evidence that was excluded was Mr. Foster's military records. And those military records had to do with why he was involuntarily discharged from the Air Force.
So Garrett Foster
he was an Air Force veteran who had been administratively separated involuntarily.
Okay.
And I want you and your listeners to understand, I'm bringing this evidence out because it was offered at trial as part of the record. And it's important for listeners to understand, I'm not trying to bash the dead guy, but it's important to our collective conversation.
Okay.
So the reason Mr. Foster was separated from the Air Force is because he suffered from suicidal ideation. And that caused the Air Force officials to order him into psychiatric care at a military facility. And then once he was discharged from the psychiatric facility, the separation process started. Here's what's important about that. The Air Force officials determined that Mr. Foster was no longer legally able to possess a firearm.
Uh-oh.
And what we're talking about is 18 USC 922 G4, which deals with people who have been committed to a psychiatric facility.
Okay.
And that is the Air Force conclusion. I can't necessarily make that conclusion without seeing Mr. Foster's medical records, and they wouldn't give those to me. But I know and I've seen, and they're part of the court's record, the Air Force documents where they repeatedly say, do not issue Foster firearms, do not allow him to possess firearms, do not authorize him to transport firearms. And so they certainly concluded he was a prohibited person. And, you know, the government's argument throughout the case was he was simply out there exercising his First and Second Amendment rights. And they made that argument knowing that, no, he wasn't legally entitled to be in possession of a firearm.
Wow.
Was Garrett Foster honorably discharged?
He was. Everybody who is administratively separated because of a medical reason gets an honorable discharge.
Yeah, and one of the questions on the Form 4473, which is the federal form you have to fill out when you buy a gun, is, have you been involuntarily committed, right?
That's correct.
And if you have, then you cannot purchase a firearm, and you're federally barred from doing so.
So, just to clarify, he was completely illegally carrying that gun.
That's my conclusion based on the Air Force records.
Okay. Just wanted to clarify that. Because if he's illegally carrying a gun, does that change the legal implications?
It changes everything.
Right.
Absolutely. Because he had no right to be out there
carrying a gun in the first place.
Yeah.
Because he's not mentally fit to be carrying a firearm, and he is, and then he's holding it in low ready, and then this incident happens.
Yeah, and by the way, that's not my conclusion that it's at the low ready. That's the government's own.
We were showing a picture of it earlier.
Yeah.
We've talked about this a million times, but some people deny that he was doing that. That's
and that drives me crazy because one of their own witnesses
stated
and used the term low ready. And
there is a picture that when you look at it, it's pretty obvious that he is.
Yes, and
He's
the
got
other,
his shooting hand like up to his shoulder, pretty much.
his
Yeah.
elbow is raised, right?
Yeah.
The other important evidence that came out was Mr. Foster was 18 inches away from Daniel Perry's car door. And so, and we know this through those same forensic engineers that analyze the photogrammetry and the videogrammetry. And so you guys know if you're holding the weapon at the low ready and you're 18 inches away.
He was probably pointing it at Daniel Perry then.
Already. His body.
Mhm.
And we all know, and the jury heard testimony that indicates that that AK-47 round will go through a regular car door like
Absolutely.
hot butter.
Right.
So he was pointing the AK at Daniel Perry.
Yes.
All right, so let me ask you more about Garrett Foster's his getting discharged from the military. So he wasn't convicted of anything in the military,
Correct.
and he wasn't, but he was involuntarily admitted into a facility.
I'm trying to be precise in what I say.
Correct.
So that I'm accurate and fair. The medical records would show, was it a commander that ordered him committed? Was it a doctor that ordered him into treatment? I don't know because I haven't seen that. But I saw all the documents that come after he gets out, and those documents make it clear the Air Force and the Air Force lawyers concluded he was a prohibited person.
Was he court-martialed?
No.
No?
No.
Okay. So no UCMJ?
No.
But he is deemed unfit to carry a rifle.
But he would be able to pass a background check.
Well, he may have passed a background check because, as you may know, the Air Force is notoriously bad about loading data into the NCIC.
Okay.
And so we saw this in the Sutherland Springs mass shooting.
Correct.
That's right.
My guess is they didn't enter any data regarding his psychiatric care.
So at the very least, he's negligent and illegally carrying.
I believe so.
Right.
Absolutely.
All right,
and blocking traffic.
So that's going to
And brandishing.
Right.
And brandishing.
Number of crimes.
Anything else?
Not that I can think of.
Okay. All right, cool. I just want to get some clarification because people are asking that question, about that. Now we come back. I want to get into once he makes it down to, he proceeds on down to 2nd Street, and then someone fires a shot at his vehicle. I want to talk about the damages on the vehicle. I want you to talk about footprints. Were there any footprints on his vehicle? We talked about the handprints. Were there any footprints? Also, were there any bullet holes in his vehicle? You have any? I'm sure you have pictures of the damage of his vehicle. And also, was there a third person that fired a shot? Because it seemed to me no one's ever talking about a third person that fired a shot. And I could swear I heard 3 different types of shots.
Absolutely, yeah.
We come back from the break, going to talk about that because no one's brought that up because people are not listening, not paying attention. This is Michael Cargill, and you are listening to Come and Talk It.
This is Coley on Noir, and you're listening to Come and Talk It with Michael Cargill.
Your business is going to have technical problems. There's no question about it. Pacific Office Automation is your guy because problem solving is our passion. Every business is unique, no matter how big or how small the problem. From copiers and printers, telephone systems, managed IT, print services, and more, we offer integrated, streamlined office solutions to keep your office humming. With Pacific Office Automation, it's problem solved. Visit pacificoffice.com today to find out more.
Whether it's a typical traffic stop or you're just involved in a use of force incident, encounters with law enforcement can be scary and stressful. In the heat of the moment, you may inadvertently say something you don't mean or make an inconsistent statement. These are red flags for officers, and if they think you're lying or your story doesn't add up, they might arrest you and let the criminal justice system decide your fate. Police officers are trained to get information from you without making the interaction seem like a formal interrogation. But remember, from the moment an officer arrives on scene, everything you say and everything you do will be scrutinized in court. the prosecuting attorney will attempt to use anything and everything against you. So what do? You say, I invoke my right to remain silent, and then let your attorney interact with law enforcement on your behalf. One important note though, do not throw common sense out the window. For example, if the intruder's hiding somewhere in your house when the police arrive, or if you saw the perpetrator pitch his weapon into your backyard, quickly tell the police and then stop talking. You might ask, what about my rights? What if the police never read me my Miranda rights? Miranda rights is the common name for a collection of rights contained in the Miranda warnings, given to suspects when they're placed under arrest. The warning comes from a 1966 Supreme Court case, Miranda v. Arizona. In that case, the court held that statements from a custodial interrogation would not be admissible unless proper procedural safeguards were in place to protect the defendant's Fifth Amendment rights. We've all seen these warnings on TV and movies. You have the right to remain silent. You have the right to have an attorney. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law, and so on. So do police have to read you your rights? No. It's important to note that officers are not required to read you these rights unless you're in custody and subjected to interrogation. If the police show up to a crime scene and start asking you general questions and you voluntarily tell them everything that happened, those statements can be used against you regardless of the Miranda warnings because you're not in custody. If you're put in handcuffs but you say something incriminating on your own without being questioned, those statements can and will be used against you because you're not being interrogated. You're just starting to spout off. This is why it's imperative that you know your rights, and you shouldn't rely on the police to read them to you. Affirmatively invoke your rights. Say, I'm invoking my right to remain silent, and my right to my attorney. Once you do that, the police legally shouldn't continue questioning you.
Welcome back to Come and Talk It. And now here's Michael Cargill.
All right, so we're talking with Doug O'Connell. He's a defense attorney for Daniel Perry. We're talking about the murder trial that took place this year off of the protest riots that happened July of 2020. And so, Doug, you're explaining to us about what happened that night back in July of 2020. And I'm asking, I want you to get to when Daniel Perry took off. He drove off from the scene, and then there were shots fired at his vehicle.
Yeah, so a very short distance after Daniel starts to get moving, heading south on Congress, a person named Nico Daisy fires 3 shots at Daniel's car. 2 hit the side of his vehicle. 1 shot is very close to the tire. It hits the wheel well. And Nico Daisy actually, even though he's very close to Daniel Perry's car, somehow he skips 1 round off the pavement, and it ends up landing on the underside of Daniel Perry's car.
Oh, wow. That's clearly deadly conduct there.
Well, it gets worse. When I cross-examined Nico Daisy, their testimony was that the commotion that he was responding to was 50 feet up the road. He couldn't see what was going on because of the crowd surrounding Daniel Perry's car. He heard gunshots. He didn't know if the gunshots were going into the car or coming out of the car. Yet when Daniel Perry takes off, he decides it's a good idea for him to pull out his pistol and fire 3 times at Daniel Perry's car.
Okay, so let me get this right. So he didn't know what was going on. He couldn't, make it out, but he thought it would be a good idea to just pull out his gun and start firing rounds at the vehicle where something was going on, not sure what was going on. And why?
Well, his explanation was it wasn't to protect himself. It wasn't to protect any third party. He was trying to mark the car for law enforcement.
What?
Okay, that's deadly conduct.
That's insane.
Absolutely deadly conduct.
You can't do that. Where is that in the Texas Penal Code where I can shoot at a vehicle so that law enforcement can identify the vehicle?
Well, it's more ridiculous on top of that because Nico Daisy is one of these people who absolutely hates law enforcement and was out there as part of this protest to...
So he's either a liar or a hypocrite, basically. Was he from Austin?
He's protesting the cops. Now he's trying to...
Originally from Indiana. He had been living in Austin shortly around the time COVID hit. He hadn't been here long. And he is not somebody who's going to do law enforcement any favors ever.
Especially especially when your whole purpose of your protest is you're protesting law enforcement.
Well, now was this guy also illegally carrying a gun?
The detective seemed to think he was and it was something to do with reciprocity. He, in fact, did have a Indiana license, but there was
driver's license?
No, concealed handgun license or a license to carry, whatever Indiana's version is. And if I understood correctly, the detective determined that there wasn't reciprocity or there was some administrative problem, which meant he wasn't really legally carrying here in Austin, Texas. And, that same detective, a guy named David Fugit, he's the 27-year detective, 18-year homicide detective. He is the same detective that determined Daniel Perry did absolutely nothing wrong and was legally justified.
Did not recommend charges
against Daniel Perry,
Right.
but he was adamant that
Nico Daisy.
Nico Daisy be charged, and of course, for political reasons.
Because you're clearly firing, you're firing rounds in a crowd.
Yeah, that's
crowd of
crazy.
people
on Congress Avenue,
just to identify a vehicle, and that you cannot do.
No.
That's one thing we actually talk about in the life scary handgun course. Under no circumstances can you ever shoot at a vehicle. We actually really go in detail and talk about that. Don't ever shoot a vehicle. Bullets do really weird things when they hit vehicles,
Right.
especially the glass.
Right.
I think it's really hypocritical how a lot of the people who are supporting the Garrett Foster side of this, who think Daniel Perry should be found guilty, and he was, but I think it's really hypocritical that they are supporting someone when they're very pro or very anti-gun, very pro-gun control, that they're supporting someone who is illegally carrying a gun.
You got to remember when you're in a situation like this, you're coming across a protest. And so you're there with a bunch of people that are there for a particular cause. So if something happens, that means everyone that's there is going to testify against you. You're going to be the only person on your side. That's one thing you got to think about that.
You don't think all the protesters are going to be fair and honest about
No,
the
absolutely
assessment?
not. They're going to turn the words and they will lie and manipulate everything to be totally against you because they're there for that cause, participate in that particular protest. And you come across this thing, it's going to be you against 100 or more other people.
In their world, Garrett Foster is a hero and a martyr.
Yeah. All right. So, Daniel Perry then goes down to 2nd Street. Makes it to 2nd Street, makes a left turn into 2nd Street, calls 911.
1st Street or Cesar Chavez.
Cesar Chavez. Okay,
Yeah.
1st Street. Okay. 1st Street.
Continues. He's on with 911 this whole time. He is freaking out. There's police cars passing that haven't seen him yet. He's yelling at him. All this is on the 911 tape.
Yeah, because police get there really quick, so they had to pass him.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And so actually the first officer who makes contact with him is driving one of their transport vans and makes contact, and then several other officers show up. Daniel cooperates. Daniel probably says too much. In my opinion, as a lawyer.
Yeah, you got to help your attorney out. Remember those little tidbits, the things that we talk about. You actually have a constitutional right. You have a right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You got to remember that when an officer gets there, the officer's got a camera. That camera's recording. It's being if the vehicle's pointed at you, you're getting recorded audio and visual. You got to exercise that right to remain silent. And now, once you've defended yourself, you protected yourself from that threat that was happening, the reason you pulled out your firearm, now you need to protect yourself now from law enforcement, and now you got to change gears into that legal system and just shut up. Don't talk and let your attorney do the talking for you and do all the fighting now.
And most of the officers I know are not going to be offended by that. They're going to be fine with it. And I'm not suggesting that Austin police officers won't give you a fair shake, because they absolutely gave Daniel Perry a fair shake. They determined he acted legally.
And it's not about that. It's about the news. The news is going to get access to this audio, this videotape. Right. It's about what's going to, this is going to be played in court. It's
about
saying.
How that prosecutor is going to twist those words and manipulate the situation, just as we've seen in this case.
That's right. Okay. All right. So then eventually he makes it down to, well, what did he say, on 1st Street?
Well, he does some good things. He articulates that I was in fear for my life. He's obviously in shock. once he figures out there's bullet holes in his car, he loses his shit a little bit. And it's all very compelling evidence that he was absolutely scared.
Okay. Now,
then he goes to the police station, gives a longer videotaped interview with Detective Fugit.
Ooh, okay. And another thing I don't like, because he then starts doing demonstrations and showing him, how Garrett Foster was holding the rifle and all that good kind of stuff, for the, this is all on the camera.
Oh, absolutely.
Did he give him his cell phone?
Gives him his cell phone.
Oh, Lord Jesus.
And later that's critical because the government...
So he gives him the cell phone so they have access to his entire phone.
Cell phone, and voluntarily gives his passwords to his apps.
Oh,
wow.
And then, of course, the government uses that at trial.
So let me ask you this then. If he wouldn't have given them his cell phone, would they be able to get a warrant to get access to his social media accounts?
Yes.
So that might not have mattered at the end of the day anyway?
Well, maybe not, but...
I'm not an attorney. But that gives me an opportunity,
right? But I'm just
to
saying
clean some stuff up, and I'm not an attorney.
Yeah, but that's destroying evidence. That's obstruction of justice.
Yeah. They can get warrants for your social media.
They can, and in fact, they did in this case.
They got his password, and then they saw it, and then they were like, "Oh, we want this information."
Well, he gave it to them. He gave them the passwords.
Let's get the authorization.
So it's possible that if he would have not given him the phone, they wouldn't have known to get a warrant for his social media.
Possibly,
Okay.
but
would have gone down that road. There was no need to go down that road.
But remember, this was a political prosecution from the very beginning, so they were going to leave no stone unturned. But like going back to the apps, one of the things they were able to do is with the Uber data, they were able to plot his travels all around the city,
his route,
because of the GPS data, and of course we don't think that hurt because it showed he wasn't down there stalking the protesters, paralleling them, doing circles around them, or trying to locate where they were.
He was dropping off, picking up, he was keeping it moving
all over the city and all the way out to the airport.
Right, he was keeping it moving. All right. Now he gets down to the police station and he gives him the cell phone. Totally cooperates because he's thinking, man, this officer, this is my friend. I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to be honest and upfront with this guy.
He's thinking I didn't do anything wrong.
I didn't do anything wrong. I'm not guilty of anything. I clearly defended myself. And then he finds out that Garrett Foster died.
Yes. So at some point, the detectives will leave you in that interview room for a good long while to let you stew and to build up some anxiety. And so at some point, another detective comes in to check on him, and he's wearing a polo shirt with the APD logo.
And I'll let you finish that when we come back. This is Michael Cargill, and you are listening to Come and Talk It.
Peace, this is Maj Toure. You're listening to Come and Talk It Radio with Michael Cargill.
Your business is going to have technical problems. There's no question about it. Pacific Office Automation is your guide because problem solving is our passion. Every business is unique, no matter how big or how small the problem. From copiers and printers, telephone systems, managed IT, print services, and more, we offer integrated, streamlined office solutions to keep your office humming. With Pacific Office Automation, it's problem solved. Visit pacificoffice.com today to find out more.
He didn't act that way. He never flinched. He went for his pockets. And when he went for his pockets, I thought my heart was going to stop. I mean, Hi, my name's Jerry. The incident we're going to talk about took place in early March of 2017. It started back about 3 years ago. We had a fella in the neighborhood that nobody really knew. We weren't familiar with him, and he was pretty regular about speeding up and down the street. It escalated into more speeding, threats. He chunked some rocks up into the yard and broke my windshield in my truck, and it escalated from that into death threats. And he was constantly chirping about how he was going to end it and he was going to kill so-and-so, he was going to kill me, and it was all chirping. The day of the confrontation, I was leaving the neighborhood and heading to a meeting downtown Fort Worth. It was a beautiful day. I had my windows down. I was in my Suburban. As I was heading out, just about to leave my neighborhood, this guy comes into the neighborhood, sees me coming out, pulls into my lane, causes me to stop, and then he kind of cut at an angle in front of me and jumped out of his truck and ran at the side of my Suburban, saying, "Today's the day you're going to die. He's going to end it." He comes over and he's slamming his hands up against the side of my vehicle, my truck. But he's screaming at me, telling me he's going to kill me. He's going to end it. This is the day I'm going to die. He reaches in to try and open up my door. I grabbed my weapon. I put my weapon right at his chest at the window and told him to get back, told him to get the hell back. And he never did. He never moved. He never changed anything. He went for his pockets, shuffling into his pockets, and he pulls out his cell phone. I drove off around and called 911 before I got to the end of my street. Yeah, I've carried a weapon for pretty near 20 years, and I've never had to pull my weapon out. Now, I can tell you that when you do that, it's the emotions are incredible. You feel the flush come through your body because you just pulled a weapon on somebody, you're pointing a gun at somebody, and they don't move. And that's a whole nother, they didn't say, "Whoa, stop," like anybody that you'd think would do that, but he didn't act that way. He never flinched. He went for his pockets, and when he went for his pockets, I thought my heart was going to stop. I was actually told that if he would have pulled out a gun, he'd have shot me before I could have actually pulled the trigger, and that's pretty awakening. I contacted Texas Law Shield and spoke with them and got a statement that I wrote, and I turned it in the following day. And it was subsequent to that I was told that I was going to be arrested for deadly conduct, and Texas Law Shield stepped up to the plate, and they got in my corner and handled it from there.
The factual...
Welcome back to Come and Talk It. And now here's Michael Cargill.
All right, so before we left on the break, we were talking about the fact that, Daniel Perry should have exercised his right to remain silent, not talk too much. You guys got to remember that. You have to defend yourself. Remember, you have a right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in the court of law. Police are not your friend. Even though, yes, I'm pro law enforcement. I do think we need more police in Austin. I'm glad that DPS was here, augmenting the Austin Police Department, but police are not your friend. You got to exercise your right to remain silent and protect yourself from police once you're involved in a situation. Everything's been recorded. What you're saying will be used on the news. The DA was going to use that. It's going to be played back in court, and it's going to be used to frame the conversation against you, on top of the fact that everyone else, if they're associated with that one person, they're going to be testifying against you as well. So there's a lot to think about, and you got to think twice before pulling out that firearm. All right. But we were talking, before we went on the break, you were getting to some really good stuff there. And I totally stopped you there. I apologize.
No problem. I would say the district attorney is not your friend.
That's right.
But so what we were talking,
especially in Travis County.
Yeah. What we were talking about is, so Daniel Perry's in the law enforcement interview room in the homicide division, but he doesn't know where he's at. They just put him in a room. And so one of the detectives comes in, just check on him. He's wearing a polo shirt with the APD logo, and it says homicide unit. And that's when Daniel Perry realized someone was dead. The guy who had threatened him, who he had to shoot in self-defense, was dead. And Daniel again loses it and breaks down.
Okay. Now, let's speed forward a little bit. Let's go to trial. So now we're in court. First of all, I didn't think this was actually going to go to court. I was actually surprised.
Never should have gone to trial because
I was surprised that they actually got an
indictment.
An indictment, yes, before the grand jury.
They manipulated that situation. You'll recall Detective Fugit swore out an affidavit alleging that Jose Garza, the DA, had tampered with him as a witness before the grand jury.
Let's talk about that a little bit. All
Yeah.
right. So the detective, his statement was what?
The gist of it was I assembled this PowerPoint presentation that went through every step of my investigation. And the district attorney ordered him to remove all the slides which contained exculpatory information and ordered him.
Meaning what?
Exculpatory meaning evidence that would show Daniel Perry acted in accordance with the law and did not commit an offense anywhere in the Texas Penal Code. And so they ordered that to be removed, and they prohibited from Detective Fugit from uttering anything that related to this exculpatory evidence.
Okay.
And it's pretty outstanding that you have a seasoned homicide detective swearing out an affidavit against a prosecutor alleging witness tampering. That doesn't happen.
Right.
And it's pretty compelling evidence that this case was political manufactured from the very beginning.
Okay. All right. And then
so the district attorney controls the grand jury, controls what they're allowed to see, controls what they're not allowed to see, and has no obligation to present the evidence that we submitted and in fact didn't. And so Daniel Perry gets indicted.
Right. All right. So he gets indicted, and now this goes to trial.
Goes to trial. And it was a pretty long trial for Travis County standards, couple weeks. The first week was the government's case in chief. And then the second week was the defense putting on evidence. And something important happened during that weekend between the government's case and the defense case. What happened, we discovered later, was one of the jurors went home that weekend and couldn't help himself and got onto the internet and researched what he thought was the law of self-defense in Texas. And he printed out what he thought was the law, and he brought it into the jury room on Monday. And he talked to at least a few other of the jurors, and he showed them this material, and he explained, hey, the way I read this, the defense has to prove self-defense. And of course, that's not the law at all. That's 180 degrees opposite of what the law is.
Correct.
The law in Texas is the government has the burden of proof.
Correct.
The government has to prove you guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, and they have to prove, or rather disprove, self-defense beyond a reasonable doubt. And so that juror and everybody else he convinced had it absolutely wrong. And so this was one of the bases of our motion for new trial. And the judge concluded, and this is pretty standard judicial logic, it's pretty standard with the idea that the judge's charge to the jury that comes at the end of the trial, the instructions, would have cleared up any misunderstanding the jurors had before they started deliberating.
Okay.
And I can't necessarily debate that logic, but it misses the point. The point is, as the jurors are sitting in the jury box receiving the evidence that we're putting on, they are filtering our evidence through this corrupted filter whereby they think we have something we have to prove.
Okay.
And that's absolutely wrong. And we believe that should have resulted in a mistrial, or a motion for new trial, and will be one of the bases for the appeal.
And and I think some things that I'm not sure if you brought them up during the trial was the stand your ground law we have here in Texas. You have a right to stand your ground. Anywhere you have a right to be, as long as you're not committing the crimes, as long as you're not trespassing. If you perceive someone trying to kill you, you can stand your ground and defend yourself. Okay. And then also we have the castle doctrine. If someone attempts to enter, remove you from your vehicle, or or they're trying to kill you while in your vehicle, you can use deadly force to stop them. So my perspective, I thought there was two different ways. He was a very good offense of defending your client was the stand your ground law and also the castle doctrine. What are your thoughts on that?
One of my thoughts is the government doesn't understand stand your ground at all.
Mm.
One of the things they kept arguing was their analysis was that there was nobody in front of the vehicle, even though people testified I kicked the front bumper. Um, but they kept arguing, well, Daniel Perry could have just driven off. The
You
reality
can't
is
drive off if someone's standing in front of your vehicle.
that's true, but even if nobody's in front, he had no obligation to drive off. And so their argument was a misstatement of the law.
Yeah, you can stand his ground. You don't have
Exactly.
to leave. You don't have. That's the whole purpose of the stand your ground law. You don't have
Especially
to
since
leave.
he's legally entitled to be on that street
That's right.
where cars are supposed to be operating.
If he jumped on start driving on the sidewalk, that'd have been a totally different story.
Exactly.
But he didn't drive on the sidewalk. He's driving on the street where he had a right to be. Okay. All right. So, all right. So we're in trial. You know, we're going through the case, and you have different witnesses come forward, and all the, of course, you're going to have witnesses that are there at the scene, participating in the protest, and they're going to, be totally against your client.
Absolutely.
Okay. And so you have a number of people. Did you guys have anyone come forward to talk about your client and his character?
We did. We're limited in what kind of character evidence we can put on during the guilt innocence phase.
Because you're got to be careful. You don't want to have some things brought in.
Exactly.
Okay. Go ahead.
But we had lots of character evidence that came in during the punishment phase, especially in light of the fact that the government tried to make Daniel out to be a racist. We had.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about his
Sure.
social media, because he gave police his phone. He gave them the passwords to his social media accounts. So now they're all in his phone, going left and right, and they're all in his social media accounts, everything.
The police saw all of that.
Okay.
They saw all of it, and they read all of it. They analyzed all of it. And when Detective Fugit testified and the prosecutors were asking him about it, he made a point of telling him, look, you're taking this out of context. You're complete. And, he also had the strong belief that they were completely manipulating the social media evidence to arrive at a destination they were trying to get to.
All right. What was the mindset of your client, as far on social media? What was his thoughts as far as the protests and things of that nature?
He was very much against violent protesting and looting and burning cities down. I share those beliefs. I'm completely in love with the First Amendment and in love with the Second Amendment, but I don't believe in violent protest. And Daniel articulated that over and over on social media. And he also, to be fair, said some really stupid things and shared some memes that were tasteless and some that were repugnant.
Right.
Yeah. And I make no apology for that. But
Everyone does it.
Yes.
Everyone does it on social media. We all do it. Do things you're not supposed to do. And we try to remind people those things are going to come up in court. Bumper stickers come up in court. What you say on social media is going to come up in court. So it's going to happen.
And some of these memes were stuff that was shared with his platoon and squad in the military. It wasn't even posted. It was direct messages that they got from the social media evidence.
All right, we're going to close this out. We come back from the break. Even what you're saying on YouTube, what you're saying right now on YouTube in the comment section, that's going to come up in court in your case too. This is Michael Cargill, and you are listening to Come and Talk It.
Yo, what's going on, guys? It's Jack Jones here, and I get my gun news from Michael Cargill on Come and Talk It.
Your business is going to have technical problems. There's no question about it. Pacific Office Automation is your guide, because problem solving is our passion. Every business is unique, no matter how big or how small the problem. From copiers and printers, telephone systems, managed IT, print services, and more, we offer integrated, streamlined office solutions to keep your office humming. With Pacific Office Automation, it's problem solved. Visit pacificoffice.com today to find out more.
Whether it's a typical traffic stop or you're just involved in a use of force incident, encounters with law enforcement can be scary and stressful. In the heat of the moment, you may inadvertently say something you don't mean or make an inconsistent statement. These are red flags for officers, and if they think you're lying or your story doesn't add up, they might arrest you and let the criminal justice system decide your fate. Police officers are trained to get information from you without making the interaction seem like a formal interrogation. But remember, from the moment an officer arrives on scene, everything you say and everything you do will be scrutinized in court. The prosecuting attorney will attempt to use anything and everything against you. So what do you say? You say, "I invoke my right to remain silent," and then let your attorney interact with law enforcement on your behalf. One important note though, do not throw common sense out the window. For example, if the intruder's hiding somewhere in your house when the police arrive, or if you saw the perpetrator pitch his weapon into your backyard, quickly tell the police and then stop talking. You might ask, what about my rights? What if the police never read me my Miranda rights? Miranda rights is the common name for a collection of rights contained in the Miranda warnings, given to suspects when they're placed under arrest. The warning comes from a 1966 Supreme Court case, Miranda v. Arizona. In that case, the court held that statements from a custodial interrogation would not be admissible unless proper procedural safeguards were in place to protect the defendant's Fifth Amendment rights. We've all seen these warnings on TV and movies. You have the right to remain silent. You have the right to have an attorney. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law, and so on. So do police have to read you your rights? No. It's important to note that officers are not required to read you these rights unless you're in custody and subjected to interrogation. If the police show up to a crime scene and start asking you general questions and you voluntarily tell them everything that happened, those statements can be used against you regardless of the Miranda warnings because you're not in custody. If you're put in handcuffs but you say something incriminating on your own without being questioned, those statements can't.
Welcome back to Come and Talk It. And now here's Michael Cargill.
All right, we're talking with Doug O'Connell, defense attorney for Daniel Perry. Doug, what did we not talk about?
Yeah, so there's a couple other key chunks of evidence that weren't allowed to come into trial, which will form the basis of appeal that we believe should have been admitted. One was Garrett Foster's street interview with a street journalist, same day as Daniel Perry used deadly force. And, people can go find that video, that interview. It's on YouTube and decide for themselves. But my interpretation is Garrett Foster says the reason I'm carrying this AK-47 in downtown Austin is to intimidate people who are not out here marching with us. That goes to evidence of who the first aggressor is and should have been admitted in trial. The other chunk of evidence that wasn't admitted at trial that we think is very relevant is Garrett Foster and his fiancee, Whitney Mitchell. They operated in concert to stop other vehicles on other days. Specifically, what they do is Garrett Foster would push Ms. Mitchell, she's in a wheelchair, out in front of other cars, forcing them to stop, and then the mob would surround the car and beat on the car, and this was kind of their set operating procedure, to the point where other people in Austin pulled guns and were ready to use deadly force. They just didn't get that far.
Right.
And so that evidence will be part of the basis of the appeal going forward.
And that's some serious stuff. You're talking about, she's in a wheelchair. He's using her, pushing her into traffic, oncoming traffic, to use her to stop other vehicles so they can surround the vehicle, intimidate the drivers.
She's a human roadblock.
Yeah.
Initiating.
And she's paraplegic.
Initiating the confrontation.
Wow.
And that's first aggressor conduct.
Have we covered de-escalation yet?
Like
the fact that he shouldn't have approached the car. If he was really using that rifle for self-defense, he should have been stepping away, right? And protecting his wife, as he said. Or am I
getting her out of danger
instead
of
escalating the situation, which is clearly what he did by approaching the vehicle.
Yeah.
I think that's inarguable.
Garrett Foster's mental state was that night that I am the self-appointed security detail for these
he was acting like
protesters.
a cop.
Yes.
He was protesting the cops, acting like a cop, like Michael has said over and over.
And he felt entitled to go up and confront people who would have the nerve and dare to drive in the streets of Austin while they were taking the streets.
You know, I think that at the end of the day, that you know, somebody could try and say that Daniel Perry was ready to kill somebody based on his text message or social media, and whether that's true or not, I don't know. I don't even really care. But I think that, I mean, call me crazy, but I think Garrett Foster was ready to kill somebody myself.
You know, there's some speculation, and the evidence wasn't quite clear about whether or not he had a round in the chamber. He had 30 rounds in the magazine, but by the time the police took control of the firearm, they can't testify without absolute certainty it wasn't cleared. Police officer grabs it in the middle of this crowd where it's complete chaos, and his job is to
get the firearm.
Get the weapon and get control of it so somebody doesn't grab it. The magazine is already detached at that point. He scoops up both and throws it in a car. And so whether or not there was a round in the chamber is up for dispute. But none of that matters.
I agree.
Because you can't, if you're looking at the muzzle of an AK-47, you can't tell whether it's on safe, off safe, round in the chamber, no round.
Right. But it does, at the end of the day, if he, you know, there's that interview with him with the street journalist. I don't know if that was Hiram or who that was.
It was Hiram.
Right. That interview shows that he was essentially saying that he was ready to, you know,
yeah, and keep in mind,
kill somebody.
Garrett had, you know, not just the rifle, but he had a club. And underneath his T-shirt, he was wearing this weird neoprene vest for one of two reasons: either to look more buff, or two, to lessen the impact of other people striking him or less lethal beanbag rounds shot by the police. There was a lot of weird stuff going on.
Did anybody bring up in the trial that they thought potentially that Garrett Foster was down there to kill somebody?
Yeah, so one of my exhibits I used in argument was photographs of Garrett all decked out for battle.
Right.
You know, rifle, club, knife, tactical backpack with another 5 or 6 30-round magazines. He's equipped for...
Wow, he almost sounds like a school shooter.
He's equipped for combat. He's ready for a firefight.
Right.
Daniel Perry was wearing shorts, T-shirt, and flip-flops.
Yeah.
You know, and
I don't think you can lynch somebody like this based on their social media, man. That's just so crazy. I've said so many insane things, and we have group chats, and we send memes, and there's all sorts. It's called.
Yeah. You better not get in trouble.
I can't say it on air because Casey will dump it, but it's called. Let's call it poop posting. There's a term for it, but like it's not real. You know, it's just insane. This is a political assassination, in my opinion, through and through, completely.
Yeah, you got to remember that stuff, though. That stuff will come up in court. It always does.
Yeah, but why does that even have based on what he said on social media, has nothing to do with how he was thinking in that isolated moment. Not to mention that you can send things that you think are funny that you don't even believe or back up. I mean, I work in comedy. Those comedians would be hung out to dry, every single one of them, if they did something wrong. You're gonna like what? You know, it just doesn't make any sense.
Everything's fair game in war.
What about George Soros funding Garza, the DA? Can we get into that?
Sure. I don't know more than what's out there in the media, but
Soros is somebody who likes to crash a country's economies and is extreme far left, and he, in my opinion, very clearly funded Garza to undermine things like Second Amendment and any sort of conservative or even libertarian value in a city like Austin.
And also law enforcement.
Yeah.
Is very much...
And I'm not even a big fan of law enforcement.
Yeah.
But I agree with you on that. I think it's very evident.
Yeah. Rather than spend the remaining moments talking about that, let me tell you guys road ahead for Daniel Perry, because it's critical to understand. We're not done fighting for Daniel. We're not going to be done fighting until we get justice. So the fight now has 3 different prongs and components. An appeal based on some of the things I've talked about, and I have no doubt that will prevail there. But also, you know, Governor Abbott has said he wants to pardon Daniel Perry. Now that the sentencing phase of the trial is over, we can submit a pardon petition, and we will. And it will include some of the things we've talked about, like the Garrett Foster's Air Force records showing that he never should have even been in possession of a firearm. And then the Army wants to give Daniel a other than honorable discharge. Now, we get the idea he has to be discharged.
Correct.
Because you can't serve in the Army if you're in prison.
Correct.
Right? But we feel strongly that, Daniel hadn't done anything wrong. And because of that, he deserves and he has earned an honorable discharge. And we're going to fight for that. We're going to fight on all three of these fronts for Daniel.
Okay. And then how can people donate to his legal defense?
Yeah, so Daniel has a Go Get Funding page, not GoFundMe, but Go Get Funding. We've had several clients who have been involved in self-defense situations where they have to use Go Get Funding because GoFundMe will not support somebody who has been charged by, a DA with a political agenda. And so if you go on that page, Go Get Funding Daniel Perry, it'll show something like $153,000. That money is gone. It's long gone. And he can use every bit of help he can get at this point because the family is financially devastated. I know you have talked about this, the absolute imperative need to have a legal defense plan if you carry a firearm.
That's right.
And I'm here to tell you, you are absolutely right. The legal expenses in a case like this are astronomical.
Yeah. And you got to help your attorneys out. You got to help them out when after you fired that shot, you defended yourself. You kind of have to help them out and don't give the other side that ammunition. You have a right to remain silent. Don't talk to police. Let your attorney do the talking to the police for you. Don't give up anything. Let them get they make them get a warrant. You get access to anything. I don't let someone search my vehicle or any of that stuff. Real quick.
And I will say this, the most helpful thing I've ever done, ever, and I've done it multiple times for anything 2A, is take Michael's class at Come and Talk at Central Texas Gunworks. It really is. Like, it teaches you the ins and the outs. You can ask all the questions. Michael is the foremost expert on 2A in Austin, probably Central Texas. It is very helpful to know your laws and to know how to properly carry and what to do.
Mm-hmm. As always, more guns equals less crime. You go out there and you buy yourself a gun. You've been listening to Come and Talk It with Michael Cargill.